It was a cold, rainy night outside Ristorante Luce. A white BMW sat smoking in the executive parking lot. Lucy Hart, sharp and luxurious, sighed in frustration. A black single dad, Marcus Hale, wearing an oil-stained uniform, carried his daughter Emma past on a delivery run. Lucy spotted him, immediately judging. "Don't bother," she snapped. "I'm not tipping delivery guys." Marcus stopped. "I noticed you needed help with the hood," he replied. As he knelt to check the engine, Lucy's phone buzzed with the blind date. Name, Marcus Hale. She looked up, connecting the name to the man with grease on his hands. The man she feared. Marcus Hale, 34, a black single dad, mechanic, and delivery driver. Muscular, calm, and deeply patient. Lucy Hart, 30, a senior corporate manager. Elegant, guarded, and prone to judging others based on appearance and status. Emma Hale, 6, Marcus's daughter. Cheerful, sharp, and fiercely protective of her father. Marcus was a man built on 3 pillars: his garage, his late-night deliveries, and the early morning shuttle service he drove. He worked 3 jobs, stretching every dollar thin since his wife passed away from a sudden illness 2 years prior. He was a single father, a protector, and a tireless provider. The exhaustion was etched around his calm eyes, but he wore it as a badge of honor. He often spoke to Emma in quiet moments, passing on his weary wisdom. "They can take our money, sweetheart, or our time," he would say, his voice low, "but they can never take our kindness, and they can never take our joy. As long as you are happy, Daddy is okay." Emma, wise beyond her years, understood the quiet sacrifice in his eyes. Lucy Hart lived a different life, one paved in sleek glass and polished steel. She was successful, beautiful, and feared in the corporate world, but her heart had been tightly locked down for 3 years. A painful breakup had left her terrified of vulnerability, convincing her that safety lay only in professional achievement and rigid control. Her friends had pushed her into this blind date, forcing her to check if she still had feelings. The name of the man, Marcus Hale, had immediately triggered her anxiety. She had briefly encountered a Marcus at her company, a gruff, lower-level technician, a man who worked with his hands. Lucy was brutally conscious of maintaining her level and was desperately afraid of being seen dating someone she perceived as beneath her. Her fear of a mismatched date is more profound than her fear of being alone. Her anxiety peaked when her expensive BMW suddenly stalled and began belching smoke just 2 blocks from the restaurant. The emergency lights flashed, reflecting off the wet pavement in frantic, broken lines. Marcus, driving his beat-up delivery van and listening to Emma softly sing a nursery rhyme, heard the distinct pop of a blown hose. He pulled over instantly, his mechanic's instinct overriding his need to complete the delivery. He walked up to the BMW, and the contrast between him and the luxury car's owner was stark. Lucy looked at his oil-stained uniform, his dark skin glistening slightly with rain, and her mind instantly jumped to the most dismissive conclusion. "I don't have cash for tips," she stated, her voice icy, not even bothering to look him in the eye. "Just go." Marcus simply smiled, a tired, genuine smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I wasn't asking for money, ma'am," he replied, his voice calm and low. "I just heard the sound. Sounds like a minor hose issue. I can fix it temporarily if you have some tape." He knelt down on the wet asphalt and opened the hood, his movements practiced and efficient. Emma stood beside him, holding her father's slightly damaged umbrella over his head, shielding him from the relentless drizzle. Lucy watched the 6-year-old, her judgment momentarily faltering at the girl's quiet devotion, but the wall of her professional prejudice held firm. After a quick, precise fix, the engine sputtered, coughed, and roared back to life. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag from his pocket. "Drive carefully," he advised. Lucy gave him a cold, clipped nod. "Thank you," she said, her tone still distant. "I suppose that's what you do, fixing broken things." She didn't mean the car. She meant people, lives, anything less perfect than herself. Marcus just wished her safe travels and led Emma back to their van, disappearing into the cold, rainy night. As Lucy pulled into the restaurant's VIP parking, her phone lit up with the date's final instructions. Your date is Marcus Hale. Table 14. Her heart plummeted, a cold stone sinking in her chest. She stared at the name, disbelief and horror washing over her. She glanced out the window one last time. The man who had just fixed her car, the man she had scorned as a mere delivery driver, the man wearing the worker's clothes, was walking into the high-end restaurant with his daughter at his side. A nearby waiter, watching Marcus lead Emma through the grand entrance, whispered to a colleague, "He may be poor, but the way his eyes look at that little girl, it makes him richer than half the people in this room." Lucy entered the restaurant, her sophisticated composure threatening to fracture into 1,000 pieces. She hoped for a mistake, a mix-up of names, a different Marcus entirely. She approached table 14, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. But when she looked up, the hope vanished. Marcus Hale stood by the table, gently adjusting the heavy linen napkin on a chair for his daughter, Emma. He looked exactly the same, his uniform slightly damp, his presence radiating an unexpected quiet strength that seemed entirely out of place amidst the crystal chandeliers and velvet booths. Their eyes met. The silence between them was total and absolute, spanning the distance between their two dramatically different worlds. Both were completely stunned. "No," Lucy whispered, her voice choked with denial. "It can't be. You." Marcus looked equally bewildered. He glanced down at his phone, then back at her. "I was told to meet a Lucy Hart here," he said, his confusion genuine. "I assumed there was a mix-up, maybe an executive playing a joke." Emma, sensing the strange tension but utterly innocent, tugged on her father's hand. "Daddy, she's the one with the smoky car." The restaurant atmosphere, already thick with wealth and pretension, turned judgmental. Nearby patrons, social climbers, and gossips craned their necks. The whispers began immediately. "That beautiful manager's on a blind date with a mechanic. She must be desperate." Lucy felt a furious blush creep up her neck. Her embarrassment was overwhelming. But it wasn't about Marcus. It was about the crushing weight of public opinion and the confirmation of her worst fears. She spoke quickly, her voice tight and low, determined to shut down the situation before it ruined her reputation. I don't think this is going to work," she murmured, the words heavy and final. "We are not compatible." Marcus simply nodded, his quiet composure returning instantly. There was no anger, only a weary understanding of rejection. "I comprehend," he said gently. "No worries." He reached for Emma's hand, preparing to leave the humiliating scene with dignity. But Emma had already connected with Lucy. She tugged on Lucy's expensive suit jacket. "Don't you want to have a dinner with us, miss?" she asked, her 6-year-old voice full of innocent, confused appeal. "We were going to have fun." Lucy froze. The child's directness, her complete lack of judgment, was a sudden, painful mirror to her own superficiality. The waiter arrived, oblivious to the drama. "Table 14 is reserved and prepared for 3, ma'am. Will you be joining us?" Unable to flee, and driven by a complicated mix of guilt and forced politeness, Lucy reluctantly slid into the velvet chair. The dinner began in excruciating awkwardness. Lucy glanced at the menu, which featured $100 entrees. Marcus, ignoring the high prices, immediately ordered a simple, inexpensive pasta dish for Emma, demonstrating his practical and protective nature. Lucy ordered something equally simple, unable to stomach the idea of extravagant dining next to a man she had humiliated. She tried to make polite conversation, complimenting Emma's drawing skills, but her attempts felt stiff and insincere. She couldn't shake the image of Marcus fixing her car and her subsequent disdain. The group of businessmen at the next table, loud and aggressive, began to openly mock the situation. "See, fellas?" One man sneered, his voice carrying clearly. "The beautiful ones always panic when they hit 30. They'll date anyone when they get desperate." Lucy's face burned. She wanted to unleash her corporate fury on them, to crush their petty assumptions. But she stayed silent, trapped by her own shame. Marcus, however, heard every word. He didn't look up. He simply continued to calmly cut Emma's spaghetti into bite-sized pieces. his huge, capable hands performing the most tender of tasks. "Don't pay them any mind, my love," he murmured to his daughter, his voice completely level. Lucy felt a sharp, unexpected pain in her heart. He was shielding his daughter from the very judgment she herself had cast upon him just an hour earlier. His quiet strength, his focus on his child, was a powerful, silent rebuke. As the uncomfortable dinner wore on, an elderly woman walking past their table paused. She gently touched Marcus's shoulder. "You remind me so much of my father, young man," the woman said softly, her eyes kind. "He taught us that the deepest love is always shown through action, not words." Marcus gave her a weary, grateful nod, confirming the truth the woman intuitively recognized. Lucy, watching this exchange, felt her sophisticated worldview begin to crumble around the edges. The tension was broken suddenly when a clumsy waiter, rushing past, accidentally knocked a bread knife off the table, sending it skittering toward Emma's feet. Marcus reacted with an almost violent speed. His large body moved like a blur, snatching Emma away from the falling blade with a rapid, practiced maneuver that was far beyond mere reflex. Lucy gasped, stunned by the sheer, controlled force of his movement. It was a reaction honed by training, almost military in its precision. At that exact moment, a well-dressed, elderly man at a nearby booth, who had been observing the drama with increasing intensity, shot to his feet. "Marcus Hale!" the man exclaimed, his voice ringing out across the quiet dining room. "It is you! Is that really you?" Lucy, still reeling from Marcus's lightning-fast defense of his daughter, looked at the older man, utterly confused. "Who is he?" she whispered to Marcus. The elderly man approached the table, his eyes filled with professional awe. "He was the chief engineer at Dynatech," he whispered back to Lucy, shaking his head in disbelief. "The genius who designed the foundational hybrid engine system that powers thousands of cars worldwide. Without his work, half the electric vehicle industry wouldn't exist." Lucy felt the blood drain from her face. She was utterly paralyzed. The man she had dismissed as a low-level mechanic, the one she believed to be without ambition, was an unacknowledged titan of her city's high-tech industry. Marcus hung his head, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "I left the industry," he confirmed simply. The older man pressed on, his voice full of concern. "Because of the accident? After your wife?" Marcus squeezed his daughter's hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I just needed to be home with my child," he replied, the simple sentence a testament to his profound sacrifice. Lucy's heart constricted with a pain she hadn't felt since her own painful past. She had called him a man of low-class status, a man only suited for fixing broken things. In reality, he had given up a world-changing, prestigious career to be a hands-on father, prioritizing love and presence over billions of dollars in potential income. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The judgmental eyes of the patrons softened, turning their focus from Marcus to Lucy, waiting for her reaction. Then the second, more crushing twist arrived. Mr. Harrington, Lucy's direct senior vice president, a man who embodied everything she sought in status and power, swept into the restaurant with a loud, boisterous group. He spotted Marcus immediately, a look of vicious recognition crossing his face. Harrington stopped dead and let out a cruel, barking laugh. "Well, look at the genius engineer now," he bellowed, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Marcus Hale, trading your lab coat for a service uniform. It actually suits you better, doesn't it?" The corporate table burst into sycophantic laughter. Marcus remained silent, his focus entirely on Emma, trying to shield her from the degradation. But Lucy, having just witnessed Marcus's quiet nobility and immense sacrifice, could not bear the public shaming. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly across the marble floor. "Don't talk about him that way," she demanded, her voice shaking with unexpected fury. Harrington raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, thoroughly entertained by the spectacle. "Defending a lower-class man, Lucy, you know our company doesn't associate with this type of person?" He spat the word type out like poison. Marcus finally placed his fork down, his movements slow, deliberate, and frighteningly calm. "I didn't ask for your opinion, Mr. Harrington. he stated, his voice a low rumble. And I'm certainly not asking for a job. Suratinanum. Lucy looked at Marcus, and for the first time, she saw him not as a socio-economic category, but as a man of formidable character, a man worthy of profound respect. Harrington leaned in, his smile gone, his voice turning cold and professional. Ms. Hart, you need to leave that table now if you want to keep your seat at the executive level. The entire restaurant held its breath. This was the freeze moment. Lucy was being forced to choose between her entire professional identity and the truth she had just witnessed. She took a deep, steadying breath. She looked at Harrington's smug face, then at Marcus's quiet, accepting dignity, and finally down at Emma, who was holding her father's hand tightly. Lucy's voice was shaky, but her answer was firm. Then I resign, Mr. Harrington, she declared, her head held high. I will not work for anyone who judges another human being's worth based on the grease on their clothes. Silence. Then a few brave souls in the back of the restaurant began to applaud. Soon the clapping spread, drowning out Harrington's furious spluttering. The waiter, who had seen it all, whispered, I've never seen anyone walk away from power to stand up for another person like that. The news of Lucy's stunning resignation echoed through the corporate towers. But instead of mockery, she received respect. Colleagues called her brave. Some even admitted they wished they had the courage to do the same. Lucy left the restaurant that night feeling a confusing mix of pure terror and profound liberation. She had lost her safety net, the very definition of who she thought she was, but she had gained her soul back. She drove home in her now repaired BMW, the irony of the situation not lost on her. The wealthy woman's life had been completely derailed by the very man she had tried to dismiss. The next day, Marcus showed up at her apartment, his uniform clean for once. He brought an old toolbox. He insisted on fixing her BMW completely, a professional, thorough repair. A thank you, he explained, his eyes warm, for standing up for me and for Emma. I can't let you drive around with a half-measure fix. He didn't pry, he simply offered practical grounding assistance. Later that afternoon, Lucy had to return to her office to pack her belongings. She dreaded the walk of shame, but Marcus insisted on driving her. He waited downstairs in the lobby, Emma quietly coloring in the back seat, a silent, comforting presence in her moment of vulnerability. As Lucy cleared out her minimalist, high-status desk, she looked at the perfect organization, the expensive office supplies, and the framed photo of herself receiving an award. She saw emptiness. The trophies felt hollow. Her corporate life had been a meticulously constructed prison of status. She took a deep breath, throwing the framed award into the trash. The only item she kept was a small, dusty cactus she had neglected for months. When she walked back down to the lobby, carrying a single cardboard box, Marcus simply took the box from her without a word and led her to the car. What now, Lucy? He asked gently on the drive home. I don't know, she confessed, staring out at the rain-washed city that no longer belonged to her. I'm terrified, but when I stood up to Harrington, I finally felt real, Marcus. I felt like the person I should have been all along. You are a good person, Lucy, he said, pulling up to her curb. You just needed a reminder of what was worth fighting for. That's okay. We all need that. Their bond deepened, moving beyond the dinner table drama and into simple, shared life. One afternoon, Lucy went to his small garage. The books were a mess. Marcus was a brilliant engineer but a struggling businessman. Lucy effortlessly began to organize his ledgers, streamlining his supplier list and cutting costs by 15% in 2 hours. You're a genius with numbers, Marcus admitted, watching her work with a mix of awe and gratitude. You didn't just lose your job, you gained a new client. I'm just enjoying using my brain to actually help someone, not just make rich people richer, she replied, smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks. Suddenly, her old life called. Her former colleague, Cynthia, saw her at the garage. Cynthia pulled her sleek convertible over, appalled. Lucy, what are you doing here? And who are you talking to? You left the company for a mechanic? Cynthia's voice dripped with condescension. Lucy stood tall, not flinching. I left a toxic environment for an honest one, Cynthia. I'm helping Marcus organize his business. Cynthia scoffed. Honey, you threw away a six-figure salary to play bookkeeper for a garage. You've lost your mind. Come back to the city. Lucy shook her head. No, Cynthia. I finally found my heart. She turned her back on her former life and walked back into the greasy, warm embrace of the garage. Lucy accompanied Marcus and Emma to the local park. She watched Marcus push Emma on the swing, his laughter deep and unreserved. She was mesmerized by the simple joy of their interaction. For the first time in many years, she felt a genuine, unguarded smile spread across her face. Emma, feeling safe and happy, ran up to Lucy. Miss Lucy, she asked, her eyes wide and sincere, do you like my daddy? Lucy's cheeks flushed crimson. She turned away quickly, trying to gather her scattered composure. The crowd at the park began to notice them. The sophisticated, beautiful woman, the kind, strong father, and the happy, innocent child. They looked like a real family, a natural, comfortable unit. Later that afternoon, sitting on a weathered park bench, Lucy confessed her past arrogance to Marcus. I was so wrong about you, Marcus, she admitted, her voice trembling with self-loathing. I judged you by your clothes, your job, your skin color, the fear of what my friends would think. But you taught me the kindest lesson about true value. Marcus looked at her. I want to tell you why I left Dynatech, Lucy, he said quietly. My wife, Sarah, she was a chemist. Brilliant. She died because of a mistake I made. I was so consumed by the engine design, I pulled an all-nighter for a week straight. I was supposed to pick up her last prescription, but I passed out at my desk. By the time I woke up, it was too late. He paused, the pain still raw after 2 years. I realized that the world-changing invention meant nothing if I couldn't be present for the one person who mattered most. That's why I do 3 menial jobs now. It keeps me grounded. It forces me to be present for Emma. I fear success and ambition more than I fear poverty. Lucy gently reached out and placed her hand over his large, calloused one. You didn't lose your ambition, Marcus. You just found a better application for your genius. Love. Just then, a child running past Emma stopped. Do you have a mommy and daddy? The boy asked Emma. Emma pointed up. My mommy is an angel, she stated simply. She then looked straight at Lucy, her small, earnest voice ringing with sudden hope. But if I had a new mommy, I want it to be Miss Lucy. Lucy broke down completely, silent tears streaming down her face. She realized the little girl was offering her the unconditional love and safety she had spent years searching for in boardrooms. If you believe kindness is the greatest strength, the force that can change a life, type, I will live kindly. A week later, Lucy found a new job. It was a smaller role, with a lower salary, but the environment was kind and prioritized people over profit. Marcus came to pick her up after her first day. He wasn't doing it as a shuttle driver or a favor. He came simply because he wanted to see her smile. That evening, Lucy came over to Marcus's small, tidy apartment bearing a gift. Emma tore open the box. A sleek, high-tech model car, the very one she had always wanted, but which Marcus had never had the money to buy. Marcus looked at Lucy, his throat tight with emotion. You didn't have to do that, he whispered. Lucy jabbed. I did it because I want to be here, Marcus, she replied. Not out of obligation, but out of choice. Emma threw her arms around Lucy's neck. Will you be my mommy, please? Lucy knelt, tears finally falling freely, and hugged the little girl fiercely. If your daddy agrees, sweetie, she managed to choke out. Marcus didn't need to speak. He simply opened his arms, inviting her into the embrace. Lucy stepped across the final threshold, moving into his arms. The 3 of them held each other for a long time, in the tiny, small apartment that suddenly felt warm enough to be a forever home. The ultimate sacrifice. The next day, Lucy did something impulsive and irreversible. She drove her white BMW, the symbol of her old life, the car Marcus had repaired, straight to a dealership and sold it. She canceled the lease on her luxury downtown apartment, trading its isolation for the chaotic, loving energy of a small family. She showed Marcus the receipt for the car sale, not as money, but as an offering. I don't need the status anymore, Marcus, she told him. I need space for the new life we're building. Lucy took down a small crumpled receipt taped to Marcus's refrigerator, the worn slip of paper he used to track every single penny of his earnings. She held it gently in her hands. "This piece of paper," she said softly to Marcus, her eyes shining with new understanding, "shows me exactly how much you love your daughter. It is proof that you are already the richest man I have ever known. We will never live without love again, Marcus." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with love. "And I choose to stay here, where the true wealth is." If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.